guys? This is Juju Talk Sports. I'm joined, of course, by Jose Corral. This is 49 Reasons to Listen. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now for more great Niners content. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Camp Jimmy. And just to start things off, let's go right at it. Jose, was Camp Jimmy a success or was it a failure?
Well, I would like to say that it's a success just because they were able to get some work in. All the guys that went out there to Nashville, anytime you could get any type of work in an off season with everybody together, especially the offense, that's always going to be a positive point. Of course, now with the situation that's going on, of course, it's even more of a positive that they were all able to get together. They were all able to get a little bit of work in because right now it's a little bit hard to get a lot of people together to do a certain type of workout like they were able to do. So I would like to say in that sort of point, then yes, it was a success. But you also got to look at what ended up happening while they were actually out there.
Wait, stuff happened?
Yeah, stuff definitely happened. Unfortunately, there was injuries when there was like no contact. Obviously, it was just guys. It was just basically Jimmy Garoppolo, throwing to guys and basically just running routes against some of the defensive guys that were out there. But still, I think in that sense, I don't think it was a success because of what actually ended up happening. We saw what happened to Deebo Samuel. The guy got a fracture in his foot. We saw Ricky James also as well. I mean, there was just, I don't know what they were doing. They were both non-contact injuries. So if you look at it at that standpoint, I don't think it was a success just because you don't want guys injured. Mm-hmm. I know it's in the off season, but you just never want guys injured. And the fact that it happened while it was non-contact stuff, maybe they could have held back and not gone out to Nashville. I don't know. In that sense, I didn't think it was necessarily a success. What do you think?
Well, I think you mentioned you can't underrate getting snaps in. At this point, we've already missed OTAs. We didn't have a rookie mini camp. These guys haven't even played catch yet. And I guess if we're going to have Deebo hurt, and it's football, injuries are going to happen. Non-contact injuries are going to happen. You could have stepped out of the shower wrong and tore his ACL. Yeah. Stuff like that happens too. But it's a shame it did. But on the bright side, you have guys like Brandon Ayuk who was out there. He got a chance to finally interact with the guy who's supposed to be throwing him balls all season. Trent Taylor, George Kittle, all those guys were out there too. But, we can't bury the lead with this. Of course, like you mentioned, Deebo got hurt. Richie James Jr., he broke his wrist. I still haven't even heard the player that tested positive for COVID out there.
Oh, yes.
With that said, COVID's going to happen. We're going to see players all the time throughout the season potentially having to take a 1 to 2 week absence due to COVID-like symptoms. It's unfortunate that it's going to happen, but at least if we're going to have it, let's get it out of the way early, I guess. In terms of guys making the roster bubble and the injuries themselves, I mean, Deebo was pretty secured in his role. It is concerning the type of injury that he sustained, though. You don't like to hear wide receivers with foot issues, specifically this Liz Frank issue that was the same injury that kept Trent Taylor out the entire year. So I like that Deebo's optimistic, but I don't think that we could just look at that and think this is a nothing kind of issue. This is nothing burger. In terms of Richie James Jr., we talked about him. He was already kind of on the roster bubble. So it does hurt him in the sense that if he can't be ready and healthy by training camp and he loses potential kick return, punt return situations, so like Travis Benjamin, he might be on his way out. As far in terms of the COVID player, I mean, there's just really no way to really evaluate that overall. Juwan Jennings wasn't there. That's an interesting character I want to talk about, the fact that he wasn't at this. I haven't heard a lot about his reasoning behind not being there, considering the majority of the offense was. But we talked about those guys with roster bubble issues, and this announcement was just made today that the NFL will be cutting 2 preseason games this year.
Yep.
So you have less opportunity to shine than you used to. So guys, they might not even have a chance to have their Jalen Hurd moment. With that said, who has the biggest opportunity in Deebo's absence to step up as our wide receiver one? Is it Jalen Hurd? Is it Ayuk? Is it someone that's not even on the roster? I mean, I just saw AB working out with Seattle, and that kind of gave me a little cause for concern, but we could revisit that issue potentially. What do you think, Jose?
Well, for the sake of not getting into who might make the team from somebody else that they might sign, with the guys that they have right now, and I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but I think it's going to have to be Brandon Ayuk. I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing that, our rookie first round pick wide receiver is going to possibly be the one to slip in there maybe the first couple weeks. They're saying that he might only miss the first few weeks of the season anyway. Deebo Samuel might only miss the first few weeks of the season. But if it has to be Brandon Ayuk, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. In a sense, you're going to put him in a pretty pressureful situation there where he's going to have a lot of opportunities to go one-on-one against some of the best corners in the league, especially early on in the season. But again, he's just a rookie. He's had no professional snaps. So maybe throwing in a guy like maybe Kendrick Bourne. We talked about his resurgence at the end of last year, how he finished the season pretty strong. But we kind of talk about it more as like a second guy, a guy that once everybody else is maybe double teamed, he could win his one-on-one battle. So if you kind of put him on that spot of being wide receiver number one for Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't know if he would still be as successful or not. Maybe he thinks he possibly is. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo is a really big fan of him. I mean, I really like the guy, but I'm not too sure if he's really a number one receiver type of guy. So it is interesting to see who is going to step up, especially if you just look at the guys that are at the roster right now. And you did mention Juwan Jennings. He wasn't there, but while he wasn't there, he actually did sign with the team. So that's a little bit interesting as well. So I think, this Deebo injury, I don't want to say that it's super catastrophic, but it's not good. Definitely not good at all. And to see who's going to step up, I'm hoping it could be Kendrick Bourne or Brandon Ayuk. But like I said, I don't know if I want a rookie right away from week one, his very first week in the season, to be the guy being like, okay, we need you as the deep threat. We need you as the number one receiver who's going to line up against the opposite team's best corner every single snap. It'll be interesting to see who's going to fill that void.
Well, the unique thing about Deebo is how Kyle was able to utilize him down the stretch. So, a lot of end arounds, sometimes even lining up in the backfield. He's such a tough physical runner. You know who that reminds me of that's on the roster? Jalen Hurd. We mentioned Jalen Hurd a couple times here. Mm-hmm. If he's healthy, he showed he had the ability in those couple preseason games. And I know you can't read too much into preseason, but when I've watched those games, I'm just looking for how the guy looks, like the eye test. The eyeball test is the only thing you can really do with those kind of games because they're playing against lesser competition in that regard. I think he does a lot of things that Deebo does himself, and that's why I think he could take a bigger leap. He may have been injured all last year, but it still is his second year in the offense. I hope that he used the time off in terms of while he was injured to study the playbook, get more acquainted with it. At least he was there. In terms of Brandon Ayuk taking that role right off the bat, I think that's just unrealistic to ask of any rookie, honestly, especially a rookie in a situation where we have no OTAs, rookie mini.
Right.
We're going to have probably a very limited training camp at that. I think I'd rather trust a guy who's at least been there. And in terms of Kendrick Bourne, I love him as a red zone threat. He's someone that Jimmy looks for on third down, which I do think is one of his better qualities. But you're right. I just don't see him as a wide receiver one. He's at best on any team a third wide receiver. On a championship level team, he's a third wide receiver. And that's not supposed to be disrespectful because I think Kendrick Bourne, at least the mentality, he's a winning player. But that doesn't make him an elite talent. And there's a difference there between being, quote-unquote, a winner and being an elite talent. And I don't think the Kendrick Bourne necessarily fits the mold of a wide receiver one to just, grab that ball and run with it. Trent Taylor is another option to, at least take some slot work too. But it definitely does put us in a weird position having Deebo hurt. In terms of, other things to kind of, consider with Camp Jimmy, like I said, at least Jimmy got some work in. You see, you look around the league and other situations, TB12's out there with Gronk and his wide receivers. And I do think that it's that Jimmy as a leader and how tough he is mentally and the system he comes from in particular, being in New England, working with Tom all those years to be able to say, hey, guys, let's get together. I know this has been a weird off season. We haven't got a chance to practice. It's going to hurt us all. I just want to, lay down on the table, play with you guys a little bit just so I can get some chemistry, some kind of, that right brain trust, get on the same wavelength with these guys. And I think that speaks to Jimmy's character a ton. And that is, again, why I think he's underrated in the media.
No, yeah, you brought up a good point. From what we could all tell, the reason it's called even Camp Jimmy is because it was his idea. It was his idea to get everybody out there. George Kittle was there anyway, so they said, okay, let's everybody fly out to Nashville. We'll all meet there. We'll all get some snaps in. And like we mentioned at the top, just the fact that they were able to get some work in, that the receivers were able to run some routes, that Jimmy Garoppolo was able to throw to some guys that he hasn't thrown maybe in a couple of years, really. And I think that is a huge positive in itself. And you mentioned it. It really comes with Jimmy Garoppolo himself. It wasn't it really is kind of crazy to see. You mentioned Tom Brady in Florida with Gronk and the rest of the receivers out there, and then him doing that, them coming from the same system, and then Jimmy Garoppolo basically learning from Tom Brady. You're seeing kind of that pick up, some of that leadership stuff with every single season that he's been in San Francisco since he was traded there. You kind of see him elevate his game as far as leadership wise and taking more responsibility. And you see that with situations like this, where it was a huge list of guys. I remember seeing the whole list. Somebody posted on Twitter, one of the beat writers for the Niners posted on Twitter, everybody was there. It was a pretty hefty list. So for him to organize everybody to get there during this crazy situation just kind of speaks volumes as to his leadership role and, the trust that the team has in him and the trust that his teammates have on him as well, saying, okay, our quarterback is asking for all of us to go across the country during a pandemic to go work out in Nashville, of all places. And everybody got up and went. And, there was injuries, obviously, but I think the whole fact that they were able to do that and that Jimmy Garoppolo organized the whole thing kind of speaks to what we've been talking about him the whole time since we even started this podcast. Is the guy is leadership first. You can tell that from the beginning. He's all about leadership. He's willing to take the bullet whenever things go wrong. A game is lost. He's able to put it on himself. And then he does stuff like this. So it's really, really positive. It's a really positive thing to see here that we have a quarterback like that who's willing to do stuff like this. So, I mean, even if we did have a couple of injuries, there's nothing wrong with getting some snaps in. It's not going to hurt for them to, get acquainted with each other a little bit more. So I'm all for it.
How pissed do you think Kyle was, though, when he got that phone call about Deebo?
Pissed, absolutely pissed. He was furious, had to be furious. And even Richie James as well. He probably was mad at both of them. But, I mean, it kind of comes with the territory. We mentioned it could have happened any other situation. I mean, Deebo Samuel could have been, I don't know, playing with some of his family members in the backyard or something, and it could have happened. But, yeah, I'm sure he was upset when he first heard the news.
Yeah, there's all kinds of weird ways to injure yourself. I think baseball has the best list of weird things. I've heard about players trying to iron shirts while they're wearing the shirt. I've heard about players on the trampoline cutting open your hand with when you're trying to separate frozen hamburgers. That's a fun way that people have ended up on the DL before. Anyway, So just want to say thank you for supporting us. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Let's keep that going. Let's keep hitting that subscribe button. Check out some of our other videos. The Jamal Adams video we posted, that's doing well. We'd like to get that over 1,000 views. So keep viewing that. Keep liking it, suggesting your friends. We're all about you, the Niners faithful. We'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your day.